You, sir, are a cold-blooded murderer, and you are a danger to society. You are a very violent individual, and you need to be removed from society.
And that's what you did. Cold-blooded murder. The court is going to impose the most significant sentence allowed under Michigan law. Life without the possibility of parole. You're going to go in the front door of the reception and guidance center. All things being equal, they'll take you out in a black bag on the way out.
An Ohio woman facing murder charges after police say that she fatally stabbed a 3-year-old boy outside of a local grocery store.
This is 32-year-old Bianca Ellis.
Hello, Miss Ellis.
She was seen smirking at the cameras at her arraignment. According to police, she not only stabbed the child, but also stabbed the child's mother as they were leaving the grocery store.
Do you wish to enter a plea of not guilty?
Sí.
Pardon me?
Sí.
What's same mean? Yes or no?
Yes.
The victim, 3-year-old Julian Wood, died in what authorities are saying was a random attack outside of the Giant Eagle grocery store on June 3rd, 2024, near Cleveland, Ohio. And while the mom was still recovering from her injuries, little Julian's dad gave this very emotional statement in court.
That day, 1 week ago, she took everything from us. There's nothing that could ever replace my son, or anything that my wife and I, even our other kids, are going through. Just do whatever you can to keep this monster behind bars.
The defense claimed Ellis had a history of mental health issues.
At this point, Ms. Ellis is incompetent and not able to assist in her defense and cannot stand trial.
So she underwent a 20-day evaluation, and the doctor treating her stated that the defendant is incompetent to stand trial, but that there is a substantial probability of restoration to competency within the statutory time frame if provided with a course of treatment.
Given what we know about this tragic case, mental health is a big part of what's going to be part of that case.
But Ellis refused to take her medication, and Judge John J. Russo signed an order forcing Ellis to take medication on the recommendation of her doctor, who said she would be able to stand trial at a later date if she took her medication properly. Her competency status is still pending.
There are a lot of safeguards in place, in particular in a place where, in a case like this, that's a serious charge, and where there is some evidence that the defendant really might pose a danger to others, to make sure that we're protecting public safety by, going through a set of procedures before we would determine that the defendant could, ever be released, if ever.
While Bianca Ellis' behavior could be dismissed as a mental issue, what happens when a killer can't stop smiling in court?
A lot of stuff going on in here, but do not talk to anyone about your case.
This is Isabelle Martinez, who was accused of murdering her whole family in Gwinnett County, Georgia.
The suspect we have in custody is the wife/mother of the victims involved.
In July 2017, Martinez stabbed her husband, 33-year-old Martin Ramiro, and all of her 5 children at their family home in Loganville. Of the 5 kids who were aged between 2 to 10, only 9-year-old Diana survived. According to reports, Martinez was depressed because of her father's recent demise and suffered from mental health issues.
She said her dad passed away months ago, I think, and I think she was under depression or something like that.
Martinez was arrested and brought in for questioning, where she told investigators she felt a devil-like spirit in her days before the stabbings.
So you do not want to have a lawyer to represent you?
No.
In her first court appearance, Martinez showed no remorse for her actions. Instead, the killer smiled, knelt down for cameras, and even gave them a thumbs up. Even the other defendants in the courtroom were shocked to hear the severity of her charges.
10 counts of murder, which of course also is a felony. You have no bond on the murder charges. Only a superior court judge can even consider bond on that. You are entitled to have a hearing.
But Martinez seemed to enjoy her time in the courtroom. She also told the court through a translator that she didn't need an attorney.
I don't need an attorney.
You don't need an attorney.
That's because, according to Martinez, she already had a powerful attorney who required no money to hire.
For me, the hope and my attorneys are always going to be the people and my faith.
Finally, Judge Michael Thorpe had enough of her antics and reprimanded the defendant.
Ma'am, I'm going to caution you to cut out the display for the cameras. It's really not a good idea and probably not to your benefit. All right, well, we are concluded with you. You probably need to stop talking.
Eventually, Martinez pleaded guilty, but mentally ill, and was sentenced to 5 life terms in a state rehabilitation facility, while Isabelle Martinez was all smiles after brutally attacking her family. What happens when a famous rapper showed no remorse after killing his friend?
What you praying for? Because you sitting over there like you don't got no remorse. Like every time I walk in, you smiling. You know, this ain't the time for that.
This is rapper YNW Melly, who was on trial for double murder in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. CCTV footage shows Melly, whose real name is Jamal Demons, outside his studio after a long recording session night in October 2018. Melly then gets into a black SUV with his close associates rapper YNW Sack Chaser, aka Anthony Williams, and YNW Juvie, aka Christopher Thomas. Later that night, police responded to a shooting incident where they found Williams and Thomas shot dead. The driver of the vehicle, rapper YNW Bortland, aka Cortland Henry, had taken the 2 victims to the hospital, claiming they were involved in a drive-by shooting. However, police believed Melly conspired with Henry, killed Williams and Thomas, and staged the drive-by shooting.
My determination was that this is not a drive-by shooting, and it's based upon this picture here, which is a very good picture to describe it. Shooter's at a stationary position when all but one of these rounds are going in.
Melly was arrested and charged with 2 counts of first-degree murder. During the trial, investigators testified that the fatal gunshots were fired from inside the car.
How many rounds were fired inside of the car?
3. When Mr. Williams was shot, Mr. Thomas puts up his hands and is shot, and then is shot again.
However, the defense's case was strong, which focused on a shoddy police investigation, including not searching Melly's house after the shooting.
Did you get a search warrant of the house in November?
No, sir.
How about December?
They were already gone at that point.
A friend of Melly's also testified that the rapper was home during the murders.
Did you see Melly in the house?
Yes.
Did you see Melly how he was dressed in the house?
Yes.
A witness also claimed on the stand that she was being threatened by the prosecution to testify.
When you first took the stand, you said, "I feel threatened."
Yes, sir, I do.
Who do you feel threatened by?
Objection, Your Honor.
What the rules?
Christine Bradley, the prosecutor's office.
This prosecutor?
Yes, I do.
Thank you.
However, while both sides argued their case,
You can also look at the manner in which the homicide was committed. Anthony Williams was shot in the back of the head.
Can you tell or determine the distance between the shooter and the victim? Can you tell us that with all your experience?
Melly was busy performing for the cameras. He often smiled and chuckled during witness testimony, including when the mother of a victim took the stand. After a week-long trial and 14 hours of deliberation, the jurors ultimately couldn't come to a unanimous decision, and the trial ended in a hung jury.
You're still unable to reach a unanimous decision.
The case is set for a retrial in September 2025. Melly currently remains in jail. While YNW Melly showed no remorse after his friends were killed, the next person on our list was just as happy to go to prison.
Is there anything that you wish to say?
No, ma'am, I thank you for your time and everything.
This is 43-year-old Lewis Matthews, who was accused of molesting a child in Tampa, Florida. In April 2019, Matthews assaulted his girlfriend's 10-year-old daughter while living with the family. According to reports, the victim's mother walked in and caught Matthews in the act. Matthews panicked and took the victim to a convenience store where he bought bleach and poured it on the little girl to destroy any DNA evidence. However, it didn't work, and Matthews, who was a repeat offender, was eventually convicted.
I'll stipulate that he was on probation at the time that this alleged offense occurred.
We're asking for life on 23.
Before imposing the sentence, Judge Kimberly Fernandez asked Matthews if he would like to make a statement.
Is there anything that you wish to say?
To which the defendant said,
No, ma'am, I thank you for your time and everything.
Instead of showing any remorse, Matthews shook hands with his attorney and chuckled on his way out of the courtroom. Ultimately, Matthews was given the mandatory minimum sentence of life in prison, while Lewis Matthews was just as happy to go to prison. What happens when a defendant refuses to recognize the law?
You're looking at an accused killer smiling as he walks into the courtroom just before he starts making demands to the judge.
This is Michael Crane, who is facing multiple murder charges in Arizona.
You are facing 3 counts of murder. Each carries the possibility of the death penalty.
In January 2012, Crane broke into the Phoenix home of businessman Bruce Godet, shot him, and set his apartment on fire. 4 days later, Crane broke into the home of philanthropist couple Glenna and Lawrence Shapiro in Paradise Valley before robbing them, shooting them, and then setting their house on fire. Crane was arrested and hit with 15 different charges, including first-degree murder, kidnapping, burglary, and arson. Crane was found unfit to represent himself, and safe to say, he wasn't too pleased by his new court-appointed counsel.
Let this record reflect that I'm here with forced counsel. You have a lawyer. I do not have a lawyer. I have never hired this lawyer. In fact, I'm firing this lawyer right now.
Crane also claimed to be a sovereign citizen and refused to acknowledge the court's laws.
I am a sovereign man. I am a man of flesh and blood. The name you're using, that's a fictional name. That's not my name. These are your laws, not my laws. These are your rules, not my rules. What kind of jurisdiction is this? Is this admiralty? Is this maritime? Is this civil? Is this criminal? What kind of court is this?
In fact, Crane went on several sensational rants throughout his trial.
You don't own me. You don't rule me. Your rules, regulations, procedures, and codes do not apply to me. I'm not bound by your rules, regulations, statutes, codes, and procedures.
When that didn't work, Crane then lashed out at the prosecutor.
I know what you're doing, and you know what you're doing. I will speak my mind. You have spoken your mind. I'm going to keep speaking.
Before turning his attention towards Judge Warren Granville.
Can it be excused now? Oh, man.
The defendant even laced into one of his victims after he made a statement in court.
Mr. Petrosky, I'm sorry for your losses, but you have no business in these court proceedings at all.
Eventually, Crane pleaded guilty to the murders and received 3 consecutive natural life sentences. While Michael Crane used every trick in the book to avoid jail. What happens when a defendant grins and accepts his fate?
But Lindsay actually grinned when the judge read his ruling, the lack of remorse not lost on David Crawford's daughter, Amanda.
Justice was served, and I'm glad it's over, and it just kind of proves to me that he's an animal as he sat there smiling.
This is Nicholas Lindsay, who was on trial for murdering a cop in St. Petersburg, Florida.
Shots fired over here. Shots fired. I got an officer shot.
In 2011, Officer David Crawford caught 16-year-old Lindsay breaking into a car near Tropicana Field and stopped to question him. During the probe, Lindsay allegedly shot the veteran cop 5 times and killed him. A fellow officer noticed the gunfire and called 911.
Quarter B, I got shots fired over here. Shots fired. I got an officer shot. 4th Avenue South.
Lindsay fled the scene and was on the run for more than 24 hours. He was arrested after CCTV footage of his escape was made public, which led to information about the suspect's whereabouts. During interrogation, the teens' parents convinced their killer child to confess.
I did not do it, and I'm telling you, I did not do it. Who did it? I don't know. You got the evidence. We right here. I was not there.
You're doing the right thing right now. You're owning up to your responsibility.
Lindsay was charged as an adult for first-degree murder. His father gave a tearful apology in court.
On behalf of me, my son, and our entire family, we send our deepest condolences and sympathy to the family and his colleague that he worked with. It's my only son. No son, that didn't happen.
The defense fought for a lesser manslaughter charge, claiming that Lindsay panicked and fired his gun out of fear.
And I think it's more likely than not that he fired impulsively out of fear.
However, the prosecution argued that the defendant's actions were deliberate.
Every single shot he fired was exactly where he aimed it, at the body of Officer Crawford.
Eventually, Lindsay was convicted of first-degree murder. Then, as Judge Thane Covert imposed his sentence, which was life in prison without parole, Lindsay sat there with an eerie grin on his face, while Nicholas Lindsay was all smiles after being jailed forever. How does it compare to a defendant calling the judge a racist?
The pros and the cons. Ma'am,
Stop it. Look at me.
Ma'am!
He keeps turning.
Ma'am, I told you once before. Let me please help you understand.
This is Bryce Rhodes, who was on trial for multiple murder charges in Louisville, Kentucky.
Your job is not to worry about me. Your job is to do your job. And his job, his job is to worry about. Your job is to do your job, not to worry about me. That's what I'm saying. Well, I worry about me.
In May 2016, Rhodes and his two accomplices, 15-year-old Anjuan Carter and 17-year-old Jacuri Taylor, tortured and stabbed two teenage brothers to death. The bodies of 14-year-old Larry Ordway and 16-year-old Maurice Gordon were found in an abandoned lot by a woman who called 911.
It looks like they're deceased and they've been burned.
Those are kids. Those are kids. And it hasn't been that long.
Rhodes was arrested and interrogated, where he initially denied any wrongdoing.
Where they run away to? Like,
well, if we knew that, man, we wouldn't be here.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
I mean, I wish I could help you where they was. You know, I don't.
But one of his accomplices, Anjuan Carter, confessed to the police.
He made my reach on his knees and I begged for forgiveness.
Carter said Rhodes tied up the two brothers, gagged them, and then stabbed them.
He tied him up, put the toboggan over his head, and he put a rag in his mouth. And then he stabbed him.
He then described how Rhodes disposed of the bodies.
He puts them in crates.
Carter also claimed he and Taylor were forced to be involved in the killings.
He
made you all stab him? So you and Corey stabbed him too? All right. How many times do you think you stabbed him?
I stabbed him one time.
He also said that the deceased brothers had witnessed Rhodes, also known as Rambo, killing a man named Christopher Jones earlier that month.
And they seen somebody just walking on the street, and they said Rambo's like at the street, and shot him. And by Reese, he was a getaway driver, so he was driving.
During his trial, Rhodes claimed the prosecutors were framing him.
The prosecution is known for falsifying and altering documents about evidence. On May 24, 2016, an informant suspect, Anjuan Carter, was detained and questioned. So he told detectives that allegedly a double homicide took place at my home, 763 North Hyde Avenue, apartment 2, Louisville, KY. So detectives called for a search warrant and searched my home. They searched for hours. They applied Blue Star chemical solution all throughout the house. They looked and looked and they found no such evidence of any type of crime. In fact, officers stated how clean the apartment was. They also stated that the carpet had cleaning solution on it, and yet nothing was still found when they applied Blue Star chemical reaction.
He even suggested that police planted evidence in his home.
So they clear the scene and they leave for 1 hour and 20 minutes. They come back and they research the home. Now all of a sudden they claim to find blood on the carpet.
If that wasn't enough, Rhodes' lawyer suddenly quit because of an alleged spitting incident between the two.
Nice cheap shot. You a coward. Nice cheap shot. You a coward.
Due to that incident and a history of misdemeanors in prison, Rhodes was strapped to a chair and wore a spit mask in his next court appearance.
Mr. Rhodes, you can just bring him up right here.
Why y'all have me come out like this for?
I think you know why. You know exactly why. Now, listen, stop talking. Have been, are you done?
No, I'm done.
You've been charged in the 4th degree. I'm going to keep talking because I don't want to have to see you back here for this.
But that did not stop the misconduct. After a profanity-laced rant, Rhodes tried to intimidate the judge by threatening to find out where she lived.
You think where you live at?
So you're saying you're going to find out where I'm out?
None of that. You got family, I'll be out.
Okay.
The threats got Rhodes hit with additional charges of terroristic threatening and intimidating a participant in the legal process.
That was a threat against the court. I think that I'm asking the county attorney's office to take that into account.
But that's not all. In his next court appearance, Rhodes accused the judge of having a sexual relationship with the prosecutor.
I don't know if y'all got some type of relationship going on or what y'all got going on, but I'm definitely gonna speak my mind.
Detective to tell him I have no relationship.
Now I'm talking about you and a prosecutor over there, sir.
He even called the judge a racist, much to the shock of his own attorney.
Are you some type of racist? Or y'all got some type of relationship going on? Which one is it? Are you a secret Ku Klux Klan member?
No, sir.
Is that what you really are?
No.
In another hearing, Rhodes smiled and made gestures at the mother of the victims, Marie Wren.
The pros and the cons. Ma'am,
Stop it. Look at me.
Ma'am!
He keeps keeps turning. He keeps turning.
Ma'am, I told you once before, let me please help you understand. You can't just talk out like that, okay?
The grieving mother lost it and had to be dragged away from the court by deputies.
Lock me up! Lock me up! Lock me up! Let me get to him! He's sick!
The victim's grandmother also reacted to Rhodes' disrespectful behavior.
It's going on 4 years for him to stay. I'm their grandmother.
Do you think he should be executed?
Yes.
Finally, after deliberating less than an hour, the jurors convicted Rhodes of all charges.
Count 5, abuse of a corpse. Maurice Gordon, we fixed the defendant's punishment for abuse of a corpse at 1 year, or 365 days.
Now it was time for the remorseless killer to learn his fate.
So the court will follow the recommendation of the jury in line with the law and impose a sentence of life without parole.
Ultimately, Rhodes was sentenced to life in prison without parole for the murders of Larry Ordway, Maurice Gordon, and Christopher Jones.
I'm gonna be brutally honest. I'm not saying I regret it because my whole life shaped the person that I am today. But what I know for a fact, if I could have changed some things, I wouldn't be here where I'm now. Stay away from drugs, guns, alcohol, teenage pregnancy or sex.
This is George Gould Thomas. He is one of South Africa's most dangerous gang leaders. George Gould Thomas is a name that instills fear in the hearts of civilians and rival gang members. The name Gould means violence, and Thomas doesn't bear the name for fun. Other gang leaders might be orchestrating robberies or murders from their hideouts, but not Thomas. The fearsome gang leader orchestrated about 4 murders from inside the prison. Thomas faced more than 50 charges, including 7 murders, 3 attempted murders, unlawful possession of firearms and ammunition, racketeering, housebreaking with intent to rob, and robbery with aggravating circumstances, amidst other gang-related charges. He was sentenced to life imprisonment for each of the 7 murders he was charged with. Out of the 7 murders, Thomas personally pulled the trigger in 3 and planned the other 4 from his prison cell. However, he was not alone. 6 of his gang members were also sentenced to life imprisonment for their crimes. Some of these crimes were carried out under instruction from Thomas while he was in prison. The rest of the accused received sentences ranging from 12 to 25 years in prison. The arrests and conviction were part of the state's commitment to preventing organized crime and crushing gang activities. The state has been under the scourge of the 26s and 28s, 2 of the country's most vicious gangs. The trial began in 2010 and covered crimes the gangs committed between 1999 and 2010. The accused persons have more than 150 charges against them. Thomas wasn't feared for nothing. 12 people linked to the case, half of them state witnesses, have been murdered. It was not surprising then that the public gallery was cleared, leaving only journalists to allow terrified witnesses to testify. The witnesses, flanked by a bodyguard, told the court that the gangs have repeatedly tried to assassinate Curtis Esterhuizen, a gangster from the rival Clever Kids gang. It was after one of these shootings that Thomas was arrested. While he was in jail waiting to be sentenced, he made more than 30,000 calls, giving orders to kill lots of people, including witnesses. Following testimonies from witnesses and a superabundance of evidence, Thomas and his cohorts were sent to prison. During the whole trial process, Thomas showed no remorse. In fact, he bore what seemed to be a smile on his face. This is TJ Lane, who's on trial for multiple murders in Ohio. Lane was 17 when he opened fire at his Chardon High School on February 27, 2012, gravely injuring several students.
At Chardon High School, we had shots fired, gunshots, multiple gunshots. 911.
Chardon High School, we need police up here. There's someone in the building with a gun.
Authorities were flooded with panic-stricken 911 calls.
911, where's your emergency? We just had a shooting at our school. We need to get out of here. Oh, okay. Do you have any idea where the shooter is? He started in the cafeteria. He started in the cafeteria? Yeah, and he ran out. Okay, who was the shooter?
His name is Thomas Lane.
After Lane opened fire in the cafeteria, the school's assistant football coach, Frank Hall, chased him outside the premises. That's where the police found Lane when they arrived and arrested him. Tragically, 16-year-old Daniel Parmenter died at the scene, while Russell King Jr., 17, and Demetrius Hewlin, 16, later succumbed to their injuries at the hospital. The shooting also left 17-year-old Nick Wolsack permanently paralyzed. All of Lane's victims were his classmates. Lane was charged as an adult with 3 counts of murder. His friends said the teenager was often quiet and kept to himself.
He was just a person that, wanted to hide himself and keep all of his emotions in.
The kind of guy that, would sit by himself and just never bother anybody.
Reports also suggested that Lane had a deeply troubled home life. His father had previously served in prison on assault charges, while his mother often stayed away from home. Lane had initially pleaded not guilty on the grounds of insanity, claiming he often heard voices in his head. But eventually, the defendant was found competent to stand trial. So to avoid the death penalty, Lane pleaded guilty to the murders.
You're pleading guilty. You weren't pleading guilty to the 3 aggravated murder charges. You're pleading firearms justification.
At his sentencing, Lane showed no signs of regret as the victims' family members addressed their children's killer.
The child stole my baby's life, and he should never be able to do this to anyone ever again.
I will have to eventually forgive you. Otherwise, you will haunt me. You will never, ever be in my thoughts after this. Never.
I want you to endure years and years of pain and abuse, which is, in my opinion, not harsh enough.
Lane's lack of remorse was more evident when he arrived for his sentencing, where he started executing his sinister plan by unbuttoning his shirt and revealing a white t-shirt with the word killer scribbled on it. Lane, who wore a similar t-shirt the day of the shooting, showed it off in the courtroom with a smug smile on his face. And if that wasn't enough, this is what the evil killer had to say to the victims' family members.
Saying pull the trigger to kill your son, no memory. Love you.
Ultimately, Lane was sentenced to life in prison without any chance of parole for the murder of his classmates.
First, the defendant's conduct was without any provocation. Second, it was extreme. He was relentless in his shooting. He repeatedly fired his gun at these victims in sequence, moving into position to better the aim. He inflicted extreme injury, and he kept shooting.
This is Michael Swanson, who was 17 when he went on a killing spree of 2 Iowa gas station attendees in the span of an hour.
Where did you shoot? On the body? Yeah. In the face. In the face? Okay. Why the face?
If I was just gonna shoot to injure her, why would I shoot her at all?
Swanson entered a gas station in Elcano, Iowa, in a ski mask and a handgun, demanding cash and cigarettes from 47-year-old Vicki Bowman Hall. Despite following the request without hesitation, Swanson still shot and killed her. An hour later in Humboldt, Iowa, Swanson repeated the same act in another gas station, this time killing Sheila Myers. He was arrested 60 miles away from the shooting when authorities identified his vehicle. With both victims following his request, but were killed anyways, it indicated that murder was Swanson's primary goal.
How did it feel when you pulled the trigger? I mean, some people say that, it feels powerful or that it's kind of a rush, or what did you feel when you pulled the trigger?
I felt powerful.
Swanson was charged with 2 counts of first-degree murder and 2 counts of burglary. All allegations of Swanson's motives were answered by himself.
I then intentionally, deliberately, and with premeditation shot the clerk, causing her to die. I did this with a specific intent to kill her.
Now, as one of the victim's daughters gives a victim impact statement, Swanson sits completely emotionless.
How could you do what you did to my mom and my family? I want to know if you're even sorry. Are you sorry for what you did? My mom was not only completely 100% innocent, but she was also a defenseless woman when you came in with that gun. You said you did it for cigarettes and money and so no one could identify you, but I think that's a lie. You did it, as you later said on, that it was so you could feel powerful.
As Swanson was sentenced, he smiled and laughed.
Cold-blooded murder. Cold-blooded murder, young man. You are dangerous. You are unpredictable. Prison for the rest of your life.
Swanson was given 2 life sentences, and 4 years into his sentence, he slit another inmate's throat. This is Taylor Shaw business. She appeared before a judge for a competency hearing to assess whether she could understand the court proceedings and assist in her defense. In February of 2022, 25-year-old Taylor Shay business was involved in a case that seemed ripped from a horror novel. Taylor and her lover, 24-year-old Shad Therian, were together one night when their usual routine took a dark turn. After smoking meth, Taylor, in a fit of drug-induced rage, strangled Shad to death with a chain in the basement of his mother's house. However, the horror did not end there. In the hours that followed, authorities claimed that Taylor Shay business sexually abused Shad's lifeless body before proceeding to dismember him. Panicked and in shock, Shub Business immediately contacted the authorities. Shub Business was charged with first-degree intentional homicide, mutilating a corpse, and third-degree sexual assault. During the competency hearing, Judge Thomas Walsh presided, while attorney Quinn Jolly represented Shub Business. An expert hired by the defense was expected to testify in the coming days, but Jolly stated that the doctor needed more time to complete his report.
Our doctor is requesting 2 additional weeks to finish preparation and evaluation of report.
Judge Walsh granted the motion, pushing back the start date of the trial to allow for a comprehensive assessment.
During the trial, and we're looking at the week of May 15th, the trial.
And in that moment, Shub Business jumped out of her chair and lunged at her attorney in a fit of uncontrolled anger. Watch it from this angle. The court officers sprang into action and restrained her. The deputies were able to remove her and place her in a holding cell. Once order was restored and the hearing reconvened, Jolly, who had remarkably sustained no injuries during the attack, requested to withdraw as Shaw Business's attorney.
At this point, I'm going to put a motion in to withdraw from this matter.
Judge Walsh granted Jolly's motion to withdraw, and Shaw Business was assigned a new attorney from the State Public Defender Office. Notably, she faced no additional charges for the attack on Jolly. Taylor Shaw Business was sentenced to life in prison without parole for killing and dismembering her boyfriend. This is 30-year-old Wade Wilson, who was on trial for double murder in Cape Coral, Florida.
He pulled her out of the car and realized that she was still breathing. Then he got back in the car and ran her over until she looked like spaghetti.
In October 2019, the man with the striking face tattoos went on a crime spree where he first choked to death 35-year-old Christine Melton at a friend's house. Wilson then stole Melton's car, visited his ex-girlfriend Melissa Martinez, and attacked her.
Describe what you mean when you say he was beating you.
It all went so fast and so slow, whether it be punches, slapping, choking, that kind of nature. Yes.
Police were called to the scene, who confronted a shirtless Wilson.
How you doing? What's going on, man? You're waiting on your girlfriend? Oh, okay. That's no problem.
But Wilson managed to give them a slip.
Don't go anywhere. Hey.
As he drove away, Wilson met 43-year-old Diane Ruiz and stopped her to ask for directions. As the unsuspecting Ruiz got in, Wilson sexually assaulted her and then repeatedly ran her over with the car.
What we know is that Miss Ruiz had been strangled, and what we also know is that she died as a result of blunt force trauma because of the multiple rib fractures.
Wilson then called his father, Stephen Testaseca, and confessed.
He just told me, he did something. There was 2 people gone that would not be back. He said, I'm a killer.
Testaseca gave police his son's location, and Wilson was arrested and charged with first-degree murder, grand theft, and battery.
Mr. Wilson, you're charged with first-degree murder, grand theft auto, battery.
At trial, Testaseca testified against his killer son.
He just said he met a girl at a bar. They went back to her house, hung out for a little bit, and then she fell asleep. He said he got on top of her and choked her. He said, I choked that. He left her there and took her car.
What did he say about the second girl?
He said he saw her walking down the street and stopped and asked her for directions. And she got in the car with him. He said he reached over and choked her. He pulled her out of the car and realized that she was still breathing. Then he got back in the car and ran her over until she looked like spaghetti.
Testaseca said Wilson was proud of his actions and showed no remorse during the confession.
He was excited. I felt like he was wanting me to feel the way he felt about it.
He seemed proud of it?
Yes.
Did he seem to show any kind of remorse?
Wilson was largely emotionless during the trial, and eventually the jury found him guilty on all charges and recommended the death penalty.
We, the jury, find that Wade Wilson should be sentenced to death.
Ultimately, it was for the judge to decide whether the serial strangler would get life behind bars or die for his crimes.
The totality of the circumstances warrants that the defendant, Wade Stephen Wilson, be sentenced to death for each count of first-degree murder.
Wade Wilson didn't even blink an eye after being slapped with a death sentence.
I'm up here to tell the truth. You can ask me anything you want. I'm gonna tell the truth.
This is Michael Brady, who attempted a prison escape that resulted in the death of 4 prison workers at Pasco Tank Correctional Institution in North Carolina.
I stabbed him like 4 to 8 times. I hit Jeffrey Howe until he stopped moving. I don't know how many times I hit him with a hammer.
Brady was facing 24 years in prison for an attempted murder conviction after he shot at a North Carolina state trooper. And 4 years into his sentence, Brady and 3 other inmates brutally murdered 4 prison workers with hammers and scissors.
That man, Michael Brady, beat that man, George Midget, like he was trying to bust concrete.
Brady then tried to hop a fence, but then was captured at gunpoint.
It was like a bloodbath, and I stepped in between Jeffrey and Lindy, and I slid trying to get in because the whole elevator floor was nothing but blood.
During the trial, the prosecutors argued that Brady was the one who planned the attack and had no remorse for the killings.
We know who originated the plan. We know who led the plan.
After Brady is found guilty, he now takes the stand at his sentencing.
I'm up here to tell the truth. You can ask me anything you want. I'm gonna tell the truth. Whether it hurts me, whether it helps me. I don't care about that.
You don't believe you're crazy, do you?
You know? I don't think I'm crazy, no.
And you do know the difference between right and wrong?
Yes.
So you know murder is wrong?
Murder is a different name for death, but yes.
Your freedom meant more than their lives.
Yes.
And now the judge reads out the jury's recommendation.
The jury unanimously recommended that the defendant be sentenced to death.
Brady seems completely emotionless, and the judge later agrees on the death penalty, where now sits locked up in Colorado awaiting his death sentence. This is Michael Madison. He is now convicted serial killer from East Cleveland, Ohio, known to have committed at least 3 murders, all of whom were women. During his sentencing hearing, Van Terry took the stand to deliver a victim impact statement to the man who tortured and murdered his 18-year-old daughter.
Right now, I guess we're supposed to, in our hearts, forgive this clown. Who's touched our families, taken my child.
In this split second, Terry is staring right at Madison, and that's when, reportedly, Madison smiled back. Terry was released without charges, and in 2016, Madison was sentenced to death, and he is currently being held on death row.